Did you say yellow?
I said yellow. Let's talk about genetic potential. So do you think there is a cap for how much strength or muscle someone can actually build? Like, we know that the progress slows down eventually the more experienced a person is,
Sure.
training age and all that. But do you think that someone is limited by how much genetic potential they actually have?
Short answer, yes. Short answer, yes. We know that there are hundreds now of genetic loci that are associated with athletic performance and response to resistance training, also aerobic training. And so I don't think we can ignore all of those things. And depending on who you ask and how big they are into predicting how those genetic factors play out, some people would say that 75% of your lifetime athletic development is going to be related to your genetics. Obviously, yes, we have biological factors, so your genetics, but those are ultimately influenced by your environment too. So a great environment, great resources, social inputs and stuff, and motivation will take people further given the same amount of biological inputs. But there's definitely a limit. And I think people who are set up better genetically are generally going to outperform those who aren't, assuming they have equal access, opportunity, and resources. And so I think how you see this play out in sport is that when you have a very small pool of individuals, that is less related to genetic sort of predisposition to performance. You basically have people who have access, who are interested, and they perform very well. That's the beginning of powerlifting. Okay, and then as powerlifting has grown and grown and grown, you're seeing these freaks come out.
Outliers,
Yeah, and they get kind of roped in. They identify themselves as high-level performers, and then you see just freaky progress. And so it's not like people watching. It's not like drugs just were invented. Like, these have been around for a while. So what you're seeing now in powerlifting and others and strength sports, where it seems like, wow, the records are really going up. You're just seeing an expanded sort of talent pool, and a lot of that you're just getting more genetic diversity, and you're identifying individuals with the favorable genetics to succeed. That said, you can't change it. CRISPR is still a new technology, so we can't really go in and change that. So the best things you can do are related to your training environment, your life environment, which respect to nutrition, sleep, training programming, and then also social factors. So for example, the women's pool in powerlifting is still very, very small, and a lot of that has to do with, little girls are told, don't get strong, don't play sports, don't lift weights. Yeah, and at some point, that will change, hopefully, and you're going to see this massive influx of female talent, and they're going to, really show what women can do. Yeah, well, so think about it like this: if you were a female Olympic weightlifter, the very first time you had any sort of international competition that you could participate in was the 2000 Olympic Games. That was the first time women's Olympic weightlifting was in the Olympic Games, whereas the men were in the 50s. Okay. And so you're like,
it's only been
it's a big gap. But yeah, the genetics thing is interesting. Some ways that you see this play out with respect to muscle mass, the size of your skeleton is the biggest predictor of how much lean body mass you can carry. Mm-hmm. And multiple people have tried to figure out a formula, is it wrist circumference and elbow girth, whatever. But yeah, the bigger your skeleton.
And then Mena Henselman also tried to make another one.
Yeah, the whole point is the bigger your skeleton is, the more muscle mass you can carry, and that's a huge genetic influence. But also, you could have great genetics, but if you happen to live in an environment where there's food scarcity, your growth will be stunted, your skeleton won't grow as robust, and then your lean body mass carrying capacity is ultimately decreased. So can't get around the genetics.
If someone's been training for, let's say, 50 years, and then he keeps on training, he's eating right, all the recovery factors are in point, would that mean he's not going to be gaining not at least 200 grams of muscle a year? Is that something that we actually know?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any study that kind of follows people around for 50 years and sees how much they can actually gain or not.
No, there's no longitudinal study that's following people over a lifetime to see not only where is the peak and when does it decline, but then also do people actually just stop? And generally when people stop, it's a culmination of factors. They aren't as active, nutritional factors change, sometimes disease processes set in, motivation to adhere to a particular program also. It always changes, but I think when you see particularly some of our current masters lifters and what they've been able to do with their totals, it gives hope that your sports performance can continue to improve for a long arc.
As long as you keep on doing it.
Yeah, I just don't know, it's just going to change like how high that arc goes based on a lot of factors that are outside of our control. Unfortunately, you see this play out in plenty of other sports too. There are no, pygmies in the NBA, for example. So yeah, there's just a selection bias for each sport. So my advice would be, if you're watching this and you're like, how do I find, the activity that I'm going to be the best at? You have to sample a wide variety of different activities, right? It's like, if you want to be a world champion powerlifter and you've been training for 5 years and you're not already at like this, class 2 or class 1 total, that may be indicative that this is not the sport where you have the highest chance of success. It doesn't mean you can't be successful in any sport. There are just other sports that might play a little bit better to your strengths. I'm not telling that person not powerlift. It's just like.
So would you argue that genetics is the main factor that kind of makes someone a successful, like top level powerlifter?
Yeah, if given adequate environment inputs. So there are probably people who have never seen a barbell that if given all the right opportunities and access would blow the current world champions out of the water. We just haven't met them.
Out of the top 10 in the world.
Yeah.
So the top one is top one because of what?
Yeah.
Hard work or genetics or?
Yeah, I don't
really know.
Yeah, well, so I don't think it's either or. All I'd say is that all the hard work in the world is not going to
outweigh your
genetics.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to be set up for success.
And then
well, that's the thing, right? But I do think when you say like it's all like a lot of this is genetics, people will view that as almost like a diss, right? And it's like no, you just have to take advantage of your gifts, right? That's the whole thing. You identify what you're good at, what you're predisposed to, and what you like. Hopefully those things like dovetail nicely, and then work hard. I don't know. I think people they want this idea like it's all up to me. Yeah. And it's something you can control, but a lot of the hard work, the work ethic, some of that stuff is rooted in genetics too. Right?
Okay, so Brad Schomper mentions in his book that the rate of protein absorption is around 10 grams per hour.
Sure.
So he says like the most fast absorbing protein, let's say whey, if you have a scoop of whey, then it's going to be at 10 grams per hour. But then how is that going to work in terms of muscle protein synthesis? Because we know that you need around 2 grams of leucine or around 20 grams of protein to actually initiate muscle protein synthesis. So how does that work?
Okay.
You have a scoop and then what happens?
Yeah, the protein like digestibility, which is basically like how much protein goes in your mouth versus how much comes out the other end.
Yeah.
And then the protein absorption studies are super interesting. These people will swallow in